Robinson.
Yeah, absolutely.
But-
Yeah, can I just check for those people at home that you can hear us?
Yes, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Right, good evening, everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry, it's only 4:30. It feels like evening. We're just waiting, if you don't mind, for the leader of Chorley to dial in. Alistair's still not on the call yet. So if everyone doesn't mind, if we could just, it's quite fundamental that he's on this. So if you just bear with us for a second or two, and as soon as Alistair appears, we'll get started, everybody. Okay, Alistair's with us now. Hi, Alistair.
Hello, how you doing?
Hi. Hello, mate. Right, we'll just welcome everybody. So thanks for the everyone attending the this quickly formed meeting. I'm not, without any further ado, other than welcoming you all, I'm going to just pass straight over to Gary just to brief on the paper, if that's okay. So, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. So, just a reminder that we started this discussion at the committee last week, and the committee asked if we would bring some more detail back in relation to some proposals that I was developing in relation to additional resources that are required across the two councils. So what we've done with the report, and thank you to Chris, who's done most of the work on this, is, and he quite usefully sets out right at the beginning, which are the new bits in the report, because again, just a reminder for members that lots of the stuff contained in this report you discussed last week. So the new bits, and hopefully Chris has clarified the position in relation to the recommendations as well, as part of this report. The additional bit relates to the discussion we were having around the capacity within the two councils to deliver on both the external agenda that we're going to have to focus on and the internal change processes that we're going through. So in essence, there are two posts that I'm proposing to create. One, a strategic lead on investments and developments, and the report sets out why I think that's really important. And part of the reason for that is that we received the Levelling Up white paper only last week. Some really interesting things in there. And the essence of the paper means that the council is likely to receive some funding from government in terms of the UK, as it's set out in the white paper, as set out in the white paper, from the UK Prosperity Fund. But our relationship with whatever the new model is moving forward is going to be one of working with partners, particularly the upper tier authorities, on consensus. Because what the white paper says is that the decision makers ultimately at this stage are likely to be the upper tier authorities. So my view is very often in relation to working on key schemes, key strategic schemes, attracting funding and working with key partners, it's all about relationship building. And in essence, my view is that at the moment, the capacity of our directors is not there for some of the reasons that we discussed last week to work on this agenda. So there's a proposition in there to create a senior post in terms of strategic developments. The second post that I'm proposing, and this really is part of the discussion we had around organisational change and the need to ensure that we do that properly. We take staff with us on that particular journey. I was kind of reminded as we started to work through this that what we have done to date, whilst we feel we've done lots of change, we've changed structures and we've changed jobs and job descriptions, but a lot of the changes in working practices and processes still haven't yet been done, and they're really to be done in the coming few years. So very important that we spend enough time, and I found that Mrs. Smith called it pastoral work. It's that ability to work with staff on the change process and to take staff with them on that journey. And again, part of the issue for me, which is presenting itself, is that whilst we've been really successful in delivering a lot, some might argue that we could have improved the way that we've done that. And quite clearly, if you talk to some of the directors, they are feeling the pressure in terms of some of the things they've got to deliver. And again, members reminded us that when you look at the wide range of services that some of them are responsible for, we recognise that that's a challenge. So the purpose of the creation of the two posts is I suppose, threefold. First one is to make sure that whatever the arrangements look like moving forward in relation to strategic developments, attracting funding, working with partners, we've got a senior person able to do that and be at that particular table. Internally, what we need to do is manage change in a different way. It will mean refocusing some of our team as well. This can't be done by one person, but the support that we give to directors and to directorates, particularly from the policy team, because you'll see that that's where that post is being created, and we're not taking out any posts in there, we're adding to the capacity in there, but refocusing that team on change in particular and assisting directorates and staff through that process. That will be fundamental to making sure this is successful. And the third element is to reflect the fact that quite clearly what I'm seeing is some strain, particularly amongst the current directors, in terms of our ask of them and what they're asking to deliver. So there will be a redistribution of some of the responsibilities for staff as well once we've created these two posts. In terms of funding the two posts, the report sets out in detail. I don't know if Louise is on, she might wish to comment at this point, but the report sets out how we can do that. A combination of being in a slightly better place than we thought in relation to the final settlements, the capitalisation of some of the costs in relation to schemes, and quite clearly we've got a number of schemes that are externally funded as well. Things like Town Deal, etc., and it's legitimate to charge some of our costs into the funding that we're receiving for that. So a combination of those three things allows us to pay for this additional capacity that we're asking for. I didn't propose at any stage. There is quite a bit of detail contained in the paper as to the rationale. Hopefully I've covered it very briefly, but I'm more than happy, along with Chris, who's helped with this, but in particular around the internal change role that's presented. Happy to take questions Chair.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Gary. Right. Who wants to go first? Any questions for Gary? Anyone? Matthew?
I broadly welcome the proposals. I think capacity has been an issue. While we're ambitious, whether we've actually got the right people in the right place to deliver what we want has been an issue rumbling around a few members' minds for a while. So I do broadly welcome these. Just as finance portfolio, what we're talking about each council's cost on this, and then when we're further talking about capitalising part of one of the roles, which I presume is not the change and development role.
Correct, yeah.
It's the other one.
It is.
What's the percentage split do we envisage on that?
Okay. So
Just a second. So on that, just so we're clear, I don't even think the development role. Sorry, Gary. We should be able to capitalise 100% a lot of that cost because into the projects that we're working on, and I think that's what the report says. So it's cost neutral to the revenue budget, Matthew. Ultimately, I think what's not cost neutral is the Director of Change and Delivery, which is an additional 100k, which is split 50-50 between
96
Yeah.
each.
Well, 48 each, 96 in total.
Well, total.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 posts.
Yep. Which we recover half of it back on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just saw people come aware. The table at paragraph 47 sets out the costs. That's a total of 96,000 per post, plus these are very senior posts. And the way that we'll pay for it, Councillor Tomlinson has just asked, well, what can you capitalise? You can capitalise costs that contribute towards the development of a capital scheme. This might be these individuals, it might be some other individuals that work on the scheme as well. But a combination of that, as I said, some additional funding that we received as part of the settlement, and some funding that we received in particular in relation to key schemes that we're getting on with. So there's some examples there. Towndale at Chorley, Towndale at Leyland. At Chorley, we received some development monies for a scheme at a place called Bengal Street. And there are monies set aside in those funds to pay for this type of work.
Thanks, Gary. Margaret?
Thank you. And thank you for the report. I wasn't expecting it to be in the middle of the other report. I thought it would have come as a separate report. So I think that has confused things slightly. But Chris very kindly pointed us in the right direction of which paragraph to read. So I didn't have to go through the whole 30 pages again, which was helpful. Right, I've got a few questions. It says when we're talking about the costs, that the final local government settlement, which came in a couple of days ago, has had the capacity to increase, and it has been favourable. Do we know? Well, you obviously do know how much money extra we got from that from the December settlement.
Yeah, there's different elements to it. We've got some indication. I still want to work through the detail. We've only just received it. So my preference is to work through the detail before sharing it. I want to be absolutely clear that what we think it is, and we haven't quite got to that place yet. So I'm reluctant to share that. No, it will be sufficient, I think. We're not talking a smaller sum. We're talking a reasonably larger sum that would cover at least half of this post. So if you think about it, we're talking about the majority of it will be capitalised. The remaining sum, which will be paid for from revenue, is split 2 ways. So I anticipate that that additional funding will be sufficient to cover that.
There was also, we are paying them £75,000 a year. One of them is called a director. I must admit, I thought the words change and delivery were a bit not very imaginative, but there you go.
I'm sure we can change that if we can think of something better.
I'm sure you can at some point in time. But the other one is called a strategic lead. but you're paying them the same amount of money as if they're both directors, and I wondered why you've made a differentiation.
Yeah, so the differential, of course, is that the individuals who are doing completely different jobs, one, it will direct a series of resources internally, because they'll be responsible for things like comms and policy and project management and all those kinds of areas. The external post is slightly different, because in essence it's partly to do work with partners, to do the enabling work, to seek funding. So it's not actually it will need some resources. We're not quite clear at this stage exactly what it will be. And we wanted to reflect the fact, or I wanted to reflect the fact, it is different to what a normal director would be doing. So it just says this is different than a normal director's post. I'm sure, I'm sure, again, we can look at that if people feel that it can be explained in a different way, or maybe a status thing. I understand that as well. I'm quite happy to review that. I'm not wedded to.
Point I think I was trying to get at. I've read this paper a couple of times, but I haven't digested it properly. We did talk last week about the mishmash, if that's the right wording, at that level below, where some of the lead are and some of the managers, and it just seemed to me better if we all knew that they were directors, these are the next level down, and so on and so forth. But that was just my thinking.
Yeah, I'll consider that more. I mean, this is draft at the minute. I can, before it goes to council, I can have a look at those things if people feel that better describes the role. Just back to your point about why it's all together, because I think it's important it is together, because it demonstrates that there are a number of things that we need to do. This is just one of them. This is kind of part one. What the report actually says is that the other piece that we need to do, that we agreed that we would do last week, is the thing that you just referred to, which is how do we now review capacity at the next level down, and get that right as well. So it's seen as a kind of holistic piece rather than kind of a separate piece. I think you have to look at those things together. Yeah. In relation to, and again, I'm kind of reading between the lines here, in terms of the salary levels, this requires a particular skill set. And the reality is that in the market, that's not even a market rate, in my view. So, we'll see. It's a challenge.
I agree. It's particularly, you're right. And I'm also with Margaret on this as well. Director of OCD doesn't sound particularly good. So I think you definitely need to have another look at that, Gary.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to blame Chris. I think he suggested that one, so I'll blame him. But we'll definitely look at that.
Right, good. Any other questions, Karen?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you again for the report. My query is on recommendation 6 to approve the consultation, the creation of a permanent shared arrangement for development projects with authority delegated to the leader to approve the final arrangements. Can you just clarify what that actually means?
Right. So at the minute, one of the things that's happening, this is in relation to not the post we're talking about, but what we've got at the minute is a informal arrangement with Chorley about development projects. So what we've got is an individual that we charge on a day rate, and some of the things that you've seen coming forward around Tatton Gardens, around the Mackenzie Arms, around Worden Park, they've all been done by this particular individual. So we've got a person with that skill set in Chorley who's been driving forward on these projects, but it's been an informal arrangement. What we're looking to do here is to formalise that now, to say, well, we've got a series of projects moving forward. Shall we formalise that? And we feel it's appropriate to formalise that now. So it's another example, I suppose, of some of the thing we've done around the pest control. We think it's right and proper that we share that now, rather than have this kind of informal arrangement that we've got. And all it's asking for is, in terms of the detail and getting that done, just allow us to, the leaders really, to deal with that.
So it is, Karen, if you look at paragraph 38 as well, it's project management, project delivery, really. It's a couple of project managers, development managers, and in QS. And I think, as Gary said, there's been an informal arrangement for the last 12 months with these driving these projects forward, and it is just literally formalising it across the two councils.
So will the committee be informed of these changes as and when they come about?
Yeah.
There'll be a decision published, won't there?
Yeah, no, we can do that.
The answer is yes.
That's fine.
I think the challenge I've got is, and maybe, this is why some of the members on the committee were surprised last week, we have got these internal processes to follow, but it does elongate the process massively. And I think, there are some things that I think we need to get on with. So there's some examples of it in here, and I wanted to just press forward on these things and get these things sorted out. Accepting we've got to get the governance and the decision making right, of course.
Thanks, Karen. I can't see who's got the hand up there. Sam?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. One of them is, and apologies for not having been around at the earlier part of this, but how did you manage all of phase 1 and phase 2 without the sort of capacity that you're now proposing for a smaller phase 3?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. So just again, I'll kind of just refer back to something I said earlier in my delivery. So one of the things that we've done, and you're quite right, is we've done phase 1 and phase 2. The things that we've done have been around structures and posts, and the change to process and how we do things and how we collaborate together. So a good example would be things like Gateway, where we've now got one delivery model across the two councils. What we haven't done in any shape or form is starting to align the processes and look at how we do things and say, well, actually, here's the best practice for doing this, and we're actually going to change it now. An example of that would be things like, this move, if you look at that model, the move to allowing staff in the back office to answer questions, some things they haven't done before for quite some time. We need to align the processes. We need to train the staff up. There's a whole raft of things to get on with in terms of the change process. So what I'm suggesting in the paper is that's probably the more difficult bit, I think, than actually sorting the structures out and the delivery models, and that requires time and effort. And what's happening at the minute is those charged with the responsibility for that, i.e. the directors, because we've got such a big programme of delivery and a really challenging one, don't have time to spend on some of those softer skills and dealing with those things. So this is about another part of the organisation taking a bit of a lead on that and helping them through that process.
I should say that because we only got wind of this, despite myself having regular meetings with a senior member of staff, and despite the previous meetings we've had in shared services, we only really got wind of this in a very little hint at the previous meeting, which has ended up with this meeting. We've only had a day's notice of this meeting. We've only had this paper for a couple of hours. I've skim read it over lunch. And the financial hocus pocus at the end is particularly distracting. So I do worry about how that will be received by members of our groups, because it will seem to like it has come from nowhere. So that's a comment I want to make. But what I imagine will also be a question that people will want to know the answer to is, if we didn't recruit these additional posts, within surely the budget consultation says that there is a deficit that needs to be made up by additional council tax of £147,000 in 22-23. So if we didn't go ahead with these additional posts, but we still capitalised on the basis that it suggests at the end of this report, what would the level of that deficit be?
Right. Okay. So again, you're referring to something that's not on the agenda. So it will be for I accept your point about the timing. I did. This is down to me. I took the opportunity at the joint committee meeting to set out some thoughts I had about what we needed to do. I thought I took that opportunity, and if members feel that's rushed, there is still the joint committee. We've got to remember is not a decision-making body. Yeah, it makes recommendations. So there will be the opportunity again, because these papers will be reproduced for the council meeting, for council to debate that in detail, and the issue about council tax and costs. I'm sure the member responsible for resources would be happy to take that question.
Sorry. Yeah, Sam, and I suppose it's to the committee as well. I think we're in a position where we charge the senior directors to have a look back and look at what was working well and where there were some challenges. And the directors have come back to us and said, the chief executive and the deputy chief executive come back to us and said, well, we've already had a look back. We already know where the challenges are. So we can either, with your consent, we can move on this quite quickly and get these additional posts in place and move on quickly, or we can wait. We can wait a few months, and I just don't feel it's appropriate to wait. If we know the chief executive has told us that there's some challenges and this is the fix to those challenges, and we've got two councils chomping at the bit to move forward with some really challenging development programs in the next 2 or 3 years. So yes, it is late. I accept it's late, and I apologise that the information's late, but I suppose that's us also doing our job. We're challenging the senior team to be proactive. We're challenging the senior team to make sure that the shared services works well. And I think all members on the committee as well in both councils will have their own views on. We've all looked back. We know the directors have been struggling with the workload. We know that we've accepted that. So whilst accepting criticisms about the lateness of the information, I also think that Chris and Gary should also be congratulated and encouraged to actually do this type of work. It was there, so let's bring it forward quickly rather than wait for another 2 or 3 months to the next cycle, would be my view. And as I say, it is going to the two councils as well. So the paper will be published in full on Tuesday evening next week, and there's ample opportunity for both individual councils to then scrutinise in detail the additional, there's a lot of information within the reports, and have that debate at council. I think what we're looking for tonight is for the committee to endorse the principles that that Gary and Chris have asked for, that they require this additional support at this level to allow the continued success and delivery of shared services. Sam, you've still got your hand up. Have you got some more questions?
Well, it was just a comment on that, really. I think I made it relatively clear over the last meeting, maybe the previous meetings, that I'm fully in support of shared services, and as far as I was concerned, it was full steam ahead. And so you shouldn't misinterpret my comments, other than to say that I do see as one of our jobs, as you said, to challenge the executive and to make sure that we have an adequate explanation as to why we would want to be expanding the capacity so much to do, where I don't think we've fully made the case that there is more to do than has been done before. Managed very well on less, if you will, previous to this. And so I think if you want us to persuade wider members of our groups on our councils, then this was not the ideal way of doing this, but we are where we are, and I think the case needs to be made better. I don't know to what degree the committee can meaningfully be requested to endorse these proposals, which we've only really had the barest of details on for the tiniest amount of time. My understanding was that this was going to be noted, and that there may well be a fuller chance to discuss these things at council, albeit at Budget Council. But I don't know what we can meaningfully do today.
Thanks, Sam. So, well, I'm prepared to, and by the way, I wasn't being critical. You know, everyone's views is absolutely relevant. You know, and we are here to challenge every one of us. And you know, I suppose the committee, if they wish to decide just to rather endorse the recommendations, we can note them and send them and say to the late notice we send it to the councils. It's ultimately, we are not a decision-making body. You know, we are just agreeing to send the proposals to council, and the two individual sovereign councils will make those decisions. And you know, we can discuss that now and decide what we're going to do. Alistair's now got his hand up. Alistair.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, a little bit echoing what you just said. I may put my hand up before you finished talking. I think Sam asked the question before. You know, how have you coped previously with the arrangements we've had previously? My own view of that is quite badly. We all said the other week that we had concerns about shared services in terms of the pace it was going at, the capacity to absorb everything, concerns in South Ribble around takeovers and all the rest of it, concerns in Chorley of a diminution of service and a deterioration of service. And therefore, I think the officers have seen two gaps, particularly around, if you like, project work, which is by its very nature up and down and has peaks and troughs, but we have a lot of it to do in both areas, and that's why the project lead role, I think, is in there. And one around, effectively, I think the transformational sort of role is about firefighting the areas where there's problems that will that have problems now and that will have problems as we carry on with doing shared services. So I understand why both roles are required, and actually supporting that. I think they've been needed for months, to be quite blunt with you. I think this has come late, and I've been saying this for 6 months, 12 months almost, certainly in Chorley. I think, yep, it is. We're trying to shoehorn this in on the back of another report because, as Gary raised that at the last meeting and said, we could start doing this now, and that's not ideal because it doesn't give us time to reflect and to analyse it in detail. But in reality, if we put it off now, we're not going to appoint for another 3 to 6 months. By which time, I think we'll have lost substantially more money than what we're talking about here between us. So therefore, to me, it's the lesser of two evils. The appointments, I presume, are going to be internal appointments because Gary's already identified these requirements and these roles and what have you. And therefore, the people that we have, the risk is, as Gary said the other day, we have a problem with retention of staff and we have a problem with recruitment of staff. So if we go down the line and have to try and get these people in later, I think we'll again spend even more money doing that as well. It's not the way we should be working, but unfortunately it's the reality of the local government world at the minute that everybody's fighting over people, and we also need to be efficient and to be at the head of our game. And therefore, that's why I'm happy to move these two roles forward on the basis of what Paul has said. And I'll tell you in a year whether they'll pay for themselves, but I think they've got to be better than what we're doing things at the moment, given some of the things that are going on. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alistair. Gary, do you want to respond?
Yeah, just to be clear about the appointment process, we will advertise them internally. There are some people who have got some of these skill sets, admittedly, but it won't be my appointment. These will be member appointments. So it will be for members to decide if any internal candidate is suitable for this post. If not, then we'll have to go external.
And it's a fair point. Even if this isn't going to be approved by the councils, if the councils approve it for another 2 weeks, and then the recruitment process will take another 4 weeks, I'm imagining. So this is 6 weeks off with us trying to not rush it through, but to accelerate it. And I think for me, the issue is not about the financial investment in the staff here. It really isn't. It's about providing the resilience to the shared services team in the two most critical areas that it's required. And if you ask me where I think the biggest risk for the authority is at South Ribble, I can't speak for Chorley, it's about our capability of delivering a number of significant projects, not in 6 months' time, not in 12 months' time, now, absolutely now. on Gary's back daily about this, that we've got the right team in place and the resilience in place to ensure that we can deliver what we want to deliver. And so, as I said earlier, and as some others have said, it's not ideal it being as quick as it is, but please, through phase 1 and phase 2, over the last 2.5 years, is it? Nearly 3 years, it's been very deliberate, it's been planned, it's been thorough, and we have challenged Gary to sort a problem out, and he's come back and said, well, I've already got a solution to the problem, you're just going to have to work with me. So on this occasion, I think it's appropriate for us to try and push this ahead with this as quickly as possible. So I can't see who else is the hand up there, Ruth. Margaret?
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to say that I'd like to give my support to our chief exec and to his team. I think they've been working in quite challenging circumstances, and if now is the time that we need to appoint more senior members of the team, then I think let's go ahead and make those posts, because otherwise we're trying to expect too much of too small a crew, I think, and as the shared services gets larger and larger, we're currently at 47% of staff. As this increase beyond, we're going to be asking a great deal of them. So yeah, I'd like to say that I accept it's perhaps a little rushed, but if this is the way we need to move, then so be it. Thanks.
Thanks, Margaret. Matthew?
Thanks. A couple of points, really. I think the case for the strategic and future investments has been well made. It's been well made by the experience we've had of having to pay. We at South Ribble, the experience we've had at South Ribble of having to pay Chorley to help us deliver the projects we want to deliver. So I think the case for that shared role is just well made by experience. And as far as the other role, the Director of Change and Delivery, we've all been involved in change, and quite often it's not the change itself, it's how it's managed and how it's followed through and how you bring people with you. And if this role can help, because my personal view is the issues we've had about, is it a diminution of service at Chorley, or is it a Chorley takeover at South Ribble? It's not the change itself that leads to those perceptions, it's how it's all been managed through. And as the timing, an opportunity has arisen to address the concerns that we've all been raising, all of us, from both councils and both parties. We've been raising these concerns for 12 months or so. An opportunity has arose to solve those. And I don't see what we would gain by just delaying it. So I think, Alistair's always said he would want to these to be endorsed before it goes to council, and I would echo that view.
Thanks, Matthew. Margaret?
I don't think neither Karen or I feel that there is any point in delaying. There is an opportunity to move forward. It's going to take a while. As Gary says, some of the skill sets are with some of the people we have, but some of them won't be. And we could be in a situation that we're out there in the market trying to find people, and that will not be easy at all at this moment in time. People's ways of working are certainly changing, and that will come into the equation when we get to that point. So I think we're quite happy to go along with this. In some ways, having the thoughts we've had, I would like to see us actually I'm glad we're going to have this paper and have a look at where the capacity is and where the gaps are, because I do think there are some gaps that need to be sorted, and I do think the pressure on some of the directors is enormous. And I think that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, we're going to have some serious problems at senior management level. And I would like to see the fact that we're going to look seriously into this and see that we have got the right resilience capacity that we need to actually take the councils forward.
Thanks, Margaret. Right, there's no further hands showing, so we've had a proposer and a seconder now. Sorry. Before we move on, any members not on committee wish to ask any questions, Phil?
Yeah, it certainly is, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Gary already knows, well, not my opinion, but we've had a very, very brief discussion. Obviously, this structure that has been put together for the shared services, and there's a sort of management structure. My view is that is this an opportunity to redesign that structure and get it right to start with? It's obviously it's grown and whatever, or we're just slotting two people in place to fill some gaps. And there's two very distinct, different ways of looking at that, really, as you might have gathered. My view was that perhaps we just need to look overall and get the positions right at this stage. If we have got to put somebody in or two people in, well, that's the way it is. But I think it needs more of an overall look in depth. That's just on that side of it. The other thing with regard to, and it's just a comment with regard to the way the salaries are being paid out of capital. God, that sounds to me an absolute disaster, to be quite honest. I would never pay anybody anything out of capital. It should be in revenue, and if there is funds generated, then it goes into capital, and then it balances the thing out at a later stage. But I wouldn't pay salaries out of capital. Just seems completely wrong. Thank you.
So just to be clear, we're not paying them out. They are fully established posts that are paid for through the revenue budget. What we're saying is when there is significant capital schemes available, Phil, you are legally permitted to recover some of that employees' costs through the capital budget and into the revenue. But that's and I know for a fact local authorities and the private sector do it up and down the country. It's a perfectly acceptable way, because when you're working on a particular project, you capitalise your costs into that project.
Yeah, well, if that's the understanding, I don't know. I've had about 10 seconds to read this, so I only picked it up on the way in, but I just glanced at that and it just didn't seem right to be paying salaries out of capital. I understand that you can offset one against the other, but you can also do that at the year end as well when you draw your accounts up. So.
Yeah, so it's terminology. It's through the revenue budget is paid, Phil, and then the council at the end of the year will balance it through the capital account. However the accountants do it, but it is perfectly legally acceptable. But I think it's also fair to say that the fundamental management structure is sound. There's just one or two slight areas of additionality that the chief executive has confirmed to us are required to help us deliver our strategic programs. But you would expect the chief executive and his team to be doing this anyway. As the priorities of the council change, as the corporate strategies change, then the structure needs to move with it slightly, doesn't it, to make sure that it does deliver our priorities. Right, so we've had a proposer and a seconder to endorse the proposals as presented in the updated report, and that we then send them to the two sovereign councils for approval. So I'll do this the easy way. Is there anyone on the committee that is against endorsing the proposals as presented? Okay, so it appears that we're all in favour then. So just to be clear, we're going to send this report now with the recommendations in as presented, and they'll be published on Tuesday night, and both councils will make a decision the week after. Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone again for. Oh, sorry, there's the hand up there. Sorry, who's that? Ruth? Sam? Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. If I thought there would have been a substantive decision to make on endorsing the proposals, I would have come to the meeting, but obviously that was difficult to do at such short notice. So, I mean, I have to register that I don't think I can personally endorse proposals simply on the timescale in which they've been presented, and also having some qualms that I don't think have been resolved yet. I hope they can be, but I just need that to be noted.
Oh, absolutely, and that is noted, Sam, and it's been minuted. Gary?
All members given some of the issues that Councillor Chapman's has raised, are members happy for me to adjust the report to try and deal with some of the issues that Councillor Chapman's raised? So hopefully it's a bit clearer. Yeah.
As long as the recommendations stay exactly the same.
No. It's to explain, you know, some of the issues that Councillor Chapman's raised. I can put more in there, so hopefully it explains it. And see if we can find new names. Yes, we'll do that as well. Thank you.
Right. So we've noted Sam's comments. Then, just to talk, so you abstain or you're voting against, Sam? Just to confirm for the minutes. I think you voted against, didn't you? Gary wants to add to his tail within the structure of the report, which he'll do and slightly amend, but the recommendations will stay exactly the same as they are for the councils. Yeah. Right, thanks everyone. We appreciate your time and the short notice, and good evening. Thank you.
That's Chair.